We're joined by Marie Alibert, spokesperson for Oser le Féminisme. I guess we could translate by Dare to be a Feminist, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you for being with us here.
Thank you.
Let's start with that last statistic. Inside the European Union, 45% of women who claim sexual harassment at some point in time.
You know, in Paris, it's much worse, actually. The official statistics in Paris is that 100% of women have experienced sexual harassment in public transportation. So it's a massive problem, whether it's 45 or whether it is the 84,000 women who are victim of rape or attempted rape in France every year. The problem of sexual violence against women is massive.
Marie Alibert, what's your general feeling? Because the statistics are hard to pinpoint because in the past people didn't speak up, right? So for when it comes to things like rape and harassment, do you have the sense that the speaking up has reduced cases of it, or is it just as bad as it's ever been?
I think it's just as bad, and I think what people don't imagine, generally speaking, is how hard it is to talk about what you've been a victim of. For example, you start talking to your families, to your friends, and the first reflex they have is minimizing what you've been through. So they say things like, "Oh, but it's okay, you're okay, all right, I'm sure you'll be fine," and they don't really listen to what you're saying. And then you go to the police and they don't believe you either. They make you tell your story 5, 6 times, and they ask you questions that imply that you might have a responsibility in what happened to you, such as, what were you wearing the night you got raped, for instance?
You're saying that it's just as bad as before, even though we've had all these high-profile cases and now it's in the news in a way that it's never been before?
It is in the news, that's true, but I think it requires a deep cultural change to have the statistics actually change significantly. So what we are doing as an organization is raise awareness to let people know that this is still happening massively everywhere.
And the increase of women's spending power, is that not at a certain time the fact that they have more power economically, isn't that going to weigh in on things?
I don't know if that's going to weigh in because women represent like half of the voters, for example, and still in politics there is a lot of sexism and there are lots of politicians who don't defend women's rights. So the fact that they are getting power economically or politically doesn't seem to make things evolve that much.
Let's talk about the Jacqueline Sauvage case, because the announcement that her appeal for an early release was rejected on the eve of this International Women's Day Against Violence Against Women. The judge is saying she didn't show contrition, that she had received what's called a partial amnesty from the president over murdering her husband after decades of abuse, but that she should have shown some contrition. After all, it was premeditated. She went back, got the weapon, and went and killed her husband.
I think the people who should show contrition in that case are the police forces who didn't do anything for those 47 years during which she was beaten, raped, and abused by her husband, and the judges who keep condemning that woman who's obviously a victim of horrible, traumatizing abuse from her husband. So I think telling her to show contrition is absolutely shameful and horrible.
We heard her daughters testify as well at the trial. How surprised are people at the fact that there isn't this early release?
People are very surprised, I think, because it is so unfair. And actually the fact that not only feminist organizations, but also lots of ordinary people signed the petition and went to the protests in favor of her release show how just fair it would have been to release her, because she's been through hell and now they're keeping her in jail for another year and a half. So that's so unfair. Nobody can understand that decision.
What about the president? He offered what was called a partial amnesty, saying, again, it was the same argument that, this wasn't in the heat of the moment. This was premeditated murder. And that he can't repudiate politically, perhaps, the entire judiciary system.
Sure, there is a political game behind all this, and the president wanted to give her some kind of pardon to show that he was hearing the public and the public opinion. But what I'd like to say about this premeditated thing is that what we are trying to defend here in France is a system in which we can recognize that this is self-defense, because this woman, her life has been threatened for 47 years. So even though at the time when she shot her husband, she wasn't directly threatened by him, she's been threatened by him for 47 years. So her life and her daughter's life actually was threatened. And we would like for our law to recognize that this can be self-defense when we're talking about abused women.
All right, Marie Alibert of Oser le Féminisme, Dare to be a Feminism. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.